So what advice would you have for a young woman who grew up partially in a rural, partially in an urban area and is about to start medical school in January?
Keep at it. Have faith in yourself. You deserve to be there. Never doubt yourself. And people may say things and people may make little snarky remarks, but never doubt your work ethic and what you've done to get to where you are and your experiences. Because honestly, your experiences are what make you the perfect person for that post or for that position, that class. And your particular experiences in life are what is going to make you as a doctor different from the next person. That's the thing with diversity that we always forget, is that how I look at things and how my white male colleague look at things are very different because of our circumstances, how we grew up and what we prioritize. So what I'm going to bring to the field is going to be completely different what he brings to the field. But both of us equally need to bring something to this field. You need to embrace yourself being there and you need to take that position up boldly because we need you. We really need you.
I hope you're hearing that advice, Yonela.
Maybe.
We need you. And the perspective that you bring and the experiences you've had make you uniquely qualified for the role.
Exactly.
Welcome. I'm Dr. Maria Christodoulou, and this is the Awakening Doctor podcast, a space where we discover the personal stories of those who work in the medical and health professions. Join me as I explore the hopes, the fears, the aspirations, and the real-life challenges of those who carry the title, responsibility, and privilege of being a doctor. So joining myself and producer Amy Kay today is Dr. Yonela Kentane. Welcome, Yonela. It's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maria.
And hi, Amy. Nice to have you here.
Hi, Yonela. Hi, Maria.
So, Yonela, you tell me, where do we begin to tell the story of Dr. Yonela Kentane?
So many places. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Yonela Sanelisiwe Kentane. I'm from the Eastern Cape, originally born in Cape Town. I always claim Cape Town, but that's a Cape Townian thing. But honestly, who I am is a woman who's raised in the Eastern Cape because that's where my dad grew up. That's where he was born. And that's where my inspiration essentially comes from. My grandmother is actually where the story begins. She was a matron in the rural Eastern Cape, a woman who had a great love for academia, also pushing the limits and changing society. I think in the rural Eastern Cape, particularly in those times, it was very rare for Black women to be pushing the boundaries as she did. And I think growing up, seeing her work so hard every single day, I remember growing up when my dad used to drop us off at her place, but she would be going to work every single day and walking, particularly when her husband wasn't around to take her to work. She would walk on a daily basis to work, and the passion that she had for her community, passion that she had for change in healthcare. So the story starts there, love for people, and how she essentially instilled that in me.
Where in the Eastern Cape did she live? Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in between Idutjwa and East London. Idutjwa is between Mthatha and Butterworth. So very, very, very small little town, neglected, one may say, but a lot of us come from there. I do like to claim Towenbeek is also from that side. I'm going to claim it, okay?
What's your earliest memory of your grandmother?
Earliest memory? I think it's in relation to my grandfather trying to hit me. Sure. I don't know what I did, but I know we're very naughty kids living in the rural areas, and my grandfather was chasing us around the house. And my grandmother was like, leave them now, you're tired. But that is my earliest memory. I don't think she was particularly standing up for us, but I think because she's very strict and she was very much about discipline. And I think growing up, my family is very much about discipline, sticking to the rules and everything. And my grandmother and my grandfather really instilled that in us. I think the few years that we all spent with them, because majority of my cousins and I, and my siblings, we did live with my grandfather and my grandparents for at least a short period of time, which is really great. We got to bond, but also the discipline was essentially instilled in all of us.
It sounds a little scary, I'll admit.
You know, it was scary when you did something wrong, but you know what? The older you got and the more you realize, okay, I need to stop doing things, that really anger these people, the better. Majority of the time, it was we had a lot of fun growing up, particularly when you're in the rurals and farm-based area. It's beautiful. I love it. And I remember we spoke previously when I had posted last year that missing home, and that is my idea of home. My most fondest of memories were there.
So what does home represent for you?
Family. Family.
And was your gran a matron in one of the rural hospitals, or was she a community carer, or how did she work?
So from my understanding, she was a matron in one of the rural CHCs. I think later on, because a lot of them do near retirement, they do go and assist more in the little NGOs, NPOs in the area. But her main, how I remember her, is a matron in the CHCs.
Right. And your schooling, where did you go to school? How did you decide to get into medicine?
So started off, long journey. Started off in Dokter in the preschools. My parents dropped us off there. We went to school there. My aunt was a preschool teacher. So we used to go to school with her. She used to drag me and my cousin, who were exactly the same age. We literally grew up as twins. We literally 7 days apart. But then when my dad finally got to a point where he felt like he can take care of my brother and I, and also bring us to Cape Town, he then moved us, I think, around 5, 6, and then moved to Wynberg Girls. And my brother Wynberg Boys, and my sister was at Wynberg Girls Primary. So moved to Cape Town, Pretoria after that for a year, and then East London for a number of years, and then grade 10, 11, and 12, boarding school in Grahamstown.
That's a lot of moving around.
It's a lot of moving around. But my dad worked quite a lot. He traveled quite a lot for work. And I guess the normal family, we move around with wherever that takes you. So we moved around where my dad went, we went, and then he left, and then we had to follow him again. And it's kind of that situation. But I always say that it really helped me find myself, and that I find it rather easy to adjust to new situations, because I've been put in such situations so often and at such a young age. I've been able to adjust. I've been able to also find myself a lot easier when I'm in a new environment. I'm able to make friends a lot easier, socialize a lot easier with different people. And I think I do relate that to my early childhood, having to change schooling and everything environments so regularly.
What was it like to move from a rural area to Cape Town? I imagine that was quite a challenge.
I did not know a word of English.
Sure.
And moving to Wynberg Girls, where, I kid you not, I think it was only the cleaning staff who knew Xhosa.
Wow.
Sure.
So in order for me to communicate, I communicated through the cleaning staff, which is why I always respect them and really appreciate them, because they really helped my journey. So assimilating or moving into such environments. So it was very difficult for me. No word of English. They really helped me. My parents also forced English upon me. So we were only allowed to speak English in the household. And now we only speak Yonela. Xhosa is not that great because it was forced out of me.
Wow.
Sure.
It's not great. But I think in my later years, about grade 8, I decided to at least try reinvest, I guess, in my Xhosa and actually try and improve it, because I had been forced for so many years to let go of it, because that's all I essentially knew.
I'm assuming there were other black children at Wynberg Girls, but they didn't.
I can't remember them because
really.
I was 5, 6. I can't remember them because I only remember Savannah, and I think she was an Indian girl, and a whole lot of white kids, and nothing else. I actually can't remember the other black girls in my class at all. But then when I went to grade 1, I do completely remember because there were quite a fair number, and it was in Pretoria, but it was more diverse.
And at what point did you decide you wanted to be a doctor?
No idea. As you grow up, you talk to your parents, they tell you the stories of their life, or you talk to your grandmother there and there, and, everyone. And then I realized that maybe I was indoctrinated to become a doctor, because there's no way.
Yeah.
There's some level of indoctrination, because my dad wanted to be a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of apartheid situations, and he was a bit active in the Transkei region, he was doing a BSc. He had to move, doing a BSc, he had to transfer to Cape Town, up in Cape Town meeting my mother. He had to, because his friends were getting assaulted by the police and everything.
Right.
And so for his safety, his mom and my aunts were, please leave. We know you want to do medicine, but please leave. And he changed courses and he ended up in finance.
Sure.
So I think he kind of said, oh, so I wasn't a doctor, so someone's going to have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Saw the capacity, I guess, and said, it's this one. And I think I was also very close to my grandmother. I used to sleep with my grandmother every single time, particularly after my grandfather passed away, when we were in the rural areas, and we'd spend about 30 minutes to an hour every morning. That's why I used to sleep with my grandma. Every morning I could stay in bed. We just talk. No one's going to come and open the door. No one's going to come and say, oh, Yonela, come. And I was really lazy. So no one's going to say, Yonela, come and clean. No, they would leave me because I'm with my grandmother. She's a matriarch. No one's going to disturb my grandmother. So it was really lovely. But the conversations, I think, and the stories that she would tell and her experiences, I think for me, got me to like what medicine's about and what she's appreciated within medicine. The people particularly, and taking care of people, and also just noting how behaviors impact your health. And I think that's what she was very much about.
Mm-hmm.
Hence public health.
Yes, I've read about and know about your interest in public health. In fact, you ended up doing an internship for a couple of weeks in Washington.
Yes.
At one stage, didn't you? I think that was around the time we got to know each other.
Yes, definitely. That was the time we got to know each other. That was an amazing experience that was organized by our dean, Prof. Forming. I approached him and I was like, Prof. Forming, I'm interested in public health. We have no exposure to this in our degree. You need to help me. And he really did, which is one thing that was really amazing, is that I think Stellenbosch medical faculty was amazing in that you could form more meaningful relations with people in senior positions, and they were keen to help if you showed any level of keenness as well.
Right.
So I approached him and he got in touch with a friend of his, and this is how I was in Washington for about a month. It was very lovely. I did my internship with Keith Martin, and he was amazing. And he was so passionate about public health or global health teaching and expansion as well in its different forms. And I think he also encouraged that public health is also about the academic aspect of it. And it's about attending conferences, because that's where you learn and that's where you hear other people's experiences. And that's the beauty of public health, is that we love learning from each other and we're keen to listen to one another. And he was forcing us to 12 o'clock, fine, you've been working, go and attend this at Georgetown, go attend this at this. And it was very nice. And you got to learn a lot. The meets and greets that we attended were amazing. And I think also being there with someone who was just as passionate about people, just as passionate about young girls' sexual health amongst that population as well was really amazing, because my colleague that I went there with is just as passionate. She's a lot better at vocalizing things and a lot better at public speaking than I was. So it was really great that even the conversations that we would have, she would be able to at least vocalize it and express it so well. It was amazing. We've got to learn from each other. We've got to learn from the environment and what Washington essentially has to offer. And also realizing that public health is so big in other areas. It's got such a great focus in places like DC. I just wish that South Africa also would have those kind of platforms on a regular basis as DC does. But I guess it's a bigger scale. A whole lot of public health hubs exist in that area, and which allows for a lot more discourse around public health things.
I was thinking there might be listeners out there who are not medical people who won't necessarily fully understand what you mean when you say public health. So what does public health mean for you? What does it offer?
For me, public health is it's such a broad, like when I said, I'm interested in public health, I remember the interest in public health for me started actually in first year of medicine. At Stellenbosch, we do a subject called health in context. And that is what public health for me is. It's health in context. It's putting health in each individual's context. It's very broad. It's population orientated rather than more of an individual basis. And that's what it is for me. It's putting health and your community health in context, saying the fact that, okay, you're living in this kind of situation. This is your background. This is what your future might be looking like, or this is what you want to do. How is that impacting your health essentially? And I didn't realize how important that is and how in health that no matter what you can do as a doctor, no matter what interventions you put in place, it will achieve whatever it achieves in that space of time. But if we don't change the person's circumstance, that
and environment,
in the environment, they're going to come back again, and you're going to have to deal with the exact same issue. Yeah, that's what public health is for me. It's changing people's backgrounds, changing people's environments for better health outcomes. It's health advocacy.
Absolutely. So there you were, growing up in this environment where your grandmother was a matron and your father had wanted to be a doctor and was actively promoting this idea that you should do medicine, and you certainly...
Not actively, I think it was passive.
Okay.
I never knew it was happening until I was 15, and he was telling me he wanted to be a doctor. And I was like, I never knew this. It was very passive.
So at what point did you decide to apply for medical school, and what was that whole process like for you?
I think in grade 10, I wanted to open myself because I wasn't sure exactly. I knew I loved people. I knew I loved helping people, but I didn't want to limit myself. I did the general 4 big major subjects: biology, physics, accounting. And I was like, you know what, we'll see how it goes in the last year. In matric, I attended a lot of the open days for the universities that were in Grahamstown. And I just opened myself. I think the decision was really just realizing that I really do like people. And I do know the fact that there's so many ways to help various people, but this is, I think, the way I would enjoy most. I wouldn't say that this is where I completely decided, because I was maybe in grade 11 at that time, when my cousin had a seizure, a febrile seizure at home. And I felt very useless. But my grandmother was on top of things. She was elderly at the time, but she was quite overwhelmed by the fact that my aunt sent her children to her, and now her children are having seizures, which is fair. But she was able to take care of the child and do the appropriate thing for the child at that moment. And I think that for me also really comforted me. But for me and my experience when that happened, was very much of I feel useless and I don't like this feeling in this situation. Where someone's health is at risk.
Right. Was that the first time you'd seen someone have a seizure?
I think in front of me. I think definitely, yes.
That can be quite frightening.
It was. And I think we were in the rural areas and there are no roads. We didn't have a car. My dad wasn't there. My aunt and my uncle obviously were in Cape Town. So essentially it was just us and my grandmother. And my other aunt was at work. So it was just very scary for us all.
Oh, wonderful that your grandmother did know what to do and could take care of your cousin.
Exactly. And I think for me, that it was very comforting.
Interesting, because you were talking about health in context, and then, there you are, and your cousin experiences something like that in that context, and the powerlessness of that and the helplessness of that situation.
Yeah.
Sure.
That was it.
So why Stellenbosch?
You want me to give the honest truth?
Yes, please. The honest truth.
Honest truth is, so I knew I want to go back to Cape Town. I think for me, it was always Cape Town, whether it's Stellenbosch or UCT. But I wanted UCT. I think that was my dad and I's dream for a very long time. When we were working, every single day when we were doing homework, this is what we wanted. We wanted UCT. When I was applying, it was always UCT. But Stellenbosch offered a bursary. My dad looked at me and said, listen here,
The man is in finance, so,
The man he said, there's no way. He said, there's no way, you okay with Stellenbosch?
Mm-hmm.
And for the mere fact that you're okay with it, I think you can take it.
Right.
But they made it a very soft blow, even though, yes, maybe it wasn't my first choice to go there, but because of finances. And also, it didn't make sense for me to go to UCT when they were not offering anything more than acceptance.
Right.
But also, Stellenbosch had the recruitment camp that we all attend, that we infamously called the Black Camp.
I remember that. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Only people of color. But for me, it felt like a very safe space. It also felt like a space where we can also connect as people of color, that next year we don't feel alone as well. But they also introduced us to other current students at Stellenbosch University who also had attended the recruitment camp, received the bursary as well. And the stories that they told and the community that Tygerberg essentially seemed to have formed, it was very comforting. So I think a lot of us took the bursary because also we felt like, you know what? It's not that bad. They've reassured us that this is not a space that we're going to feel left out. This is not a space that we're going to feel like we can't be ourselves. And that's it. You know what? You're giving me money. You're going to essentially be my parents. And you also saying that I'm going to be comfortable in the space. Right. So I said, I'm okay with it.
Sitting here thinking, well, when I was at school, thinking about medical school, there was also this whole UCT was the goal. And I'm sitting here today thinking, what was it? Why was UCT the goal? What did we know about UCT that made us, you and I, think that that was the prize to go to UCT? What was it in your days?
The rumor was that UCT was the best in medicine. The best doctors come out of UCT, the best people. The experience is also lovely in Cape Town. So I think for me, it was just always, I want to be at the top university because I don't know anything other than being at the top. I need to be at the top as well.
So what did it feel like to then say, okay, because of the bursary, because they're making it quite a welcoming space, I'll accept this place at Stellenbosch? How was that decision for you?
But Stellenbosch also said, no, listen, you want to be a Stellenbosch doctor. And I cannot, for the life of me, forget. It was the head of medicine at the time. He said it every single time, and even said it when we were there for the recruitment camp. And I was like, wow, you're making me want to be a Stellenbosch doctor too. And I think they reassured us that you're going to come out of there on top. You're going to come out of there clinically on top. And then when I discussed with my aunt, who was a doctor as well, and everyone, they also said, no, Stellenbosch lecturers are actually very good. So I think I was reassured by that. And I think I had to be realistic. And unfortunately, finances are a thing that one has to take in consideration. One has dreams, but if financially they're not feasible, I said no.
Right.
My dad's influence, that's it. If there's not a major deficit that or any disadvantage that I'm going to face by going to Stellenbosch or choosing Stellenbosch over UCT, then yes, it was Stellenbosch.
Right.
Stellenbosch won.
I don't know if Stellenbosch is still doing that recruitment camp. I think they do, but it was certainly part of the whole transformation drive at that time to diversify the campus. And
it was a very good job.
They did. In fact, it's the most diversity transformed campus in terms of demographics in the country for a long time. It may still be.
No, definitely. And it felt like it. I didn't feel like I was alone. It didn't feel like people like me were never there. It felt relatively comfortable.
And that experience that you had at the recruitment camp where you had the idea that actually there were others like you, there were people you could be friends with, that you would be welcome and that it was a safe space. Was that your experience of being at Stellenbosch Medical School?
Yes, it was definitely my experiences. I also ended up being friends with a lot of the people that I met there. So a lot of my friends still are the people I met at recruitment camp. So for me, I think that was important. Yeah. And now you look back and you're like, yo, thank God I made that decision.
Interesting. So are you proud to be a Stellenbosch doctor?
I'm very proud to be a Stellenbosch boss, yes, doctor. I'm very proud. I can't say I'm not. We're glad to go back either.
Sure.
Which is crazy. I think for me, it's crazy how you couldn't fully imagine yourself in a place and now you would not mind going back. You know?
That's great. So, medical school's not that long ago. You graduated, 3 years ago?
2020.
Okay, so 4 years ago. Are there any specific incidents or times that stand out for you? Things about being a medical student, memories of things that happened that are highlights for you?
As a student, I think for me, general surgery, third year, I think that was one of the things that really stood out for me. I'm a very confident person. I wouldn't say confident. I can, in a one-on-one situation or very small group, I can be very confident, and I'm very out there. I'm not going to shy away. I'm going to make people laugh. I'm going to do things. Honestly, it's a family thing. But I remember third year, I was in a surgery, crazy little surgery. And we were doing general surgery, I think it was HPB. And I had a registrar who we were dealing with on a daily basis. And we had our own patients. At Stellenbosch, you have your own patients and you follow up your own patients. And every morning you see your patients. No one knows your patient as much as you know your patient. And it was lovely. And I think one of the things I loved that made me love medicine even more. So we were intaking patients and we all had seen patients. And I was presenting, but I think the reg asked, okay, anyone? And I was like, I do. And then I think I was very fast or very loud, or I don't know. It was a white male Afrikaans reg. And he said to me, oh, you're very confident. But in the way that he said it, I can't remember what was happening exactly, but I just remember him saying to me in front of everyone in my group, oh, but you're very confident. It was like a stab in the heart. As if he was saying I shouldn't be. That was for me. But yeah, that was one of the things that I remember. Present to the patient. Then I went home. I think I reflected on it. And how it was unnecessary on his part. But how it made me feel. But obviously my colleagues, I was the only Black woman in the group. Everyone else was white colleagues, and they were very, very nice, and they're females, very supportive. My clinical partner was a white man. He was like, he was ready to throw arms. At that time, we really had each other's backs. I showed him how confident or not so confident I can be the days after, because it was so unnecessary. But I think those are like the microaggressions that we experienced, and the little jabs that, I don't know, maybe he was trying to, bring it down or say that I had no grounds to be that confident. But also, I'm 30. So is it really necessary for you to say that? But for me, most memorable time. But I think also I'm a very positive person, but that for me was like I'm not going to let anyone dictate how I should be or how I should present myself. I'm not going to dim myself for you or place myself at a level that you believe that I should be at. It really helped me navigate the surgical life. Now I'm experiencing, because a lot of the doctors that we do come across in surgery are very condescending, are bullies, and being able to be like, you know what, you know how to stand up for yourself. And if you need to, you do it.
Yeah.
In an appropriate way. Basically, the next day, I was not confident anymore. And he had to beg me to present my patients.
Gosh, Yonela.
I was like, you're going to beg me to present all my patients because this is how a not so confident Yonela looks like. You're going to ask, whose patient is this? Instead of me running to the front and saying hi and making things very simple and easy for you. The little things we have experienced has taught me so much outside of just the classroom, but just how to deal with people and how not to let people put you down because of whatever reason that they have. But I did get a surgery out of it. I think it was his way of apologizing, you know? And he was like, no, don't you want to help me? Can you come and assist? It's your patient. And I was like, sure thing. And we were there.
I know you tend to be quite an optimistic person. And as you've been telling this story, what listeners can't see is that you've had a smile on your face throughout, even as the tears were falling. I'm curious about the tears because it's a couple of years ago. Tell us about the tears today when you talk about that.
I think the tears today is that we're constantly facing these things in the surgical discipline, these personalities that don't look to uplift. Particularly this circuit that I'm in, people aren't looking to uplift. And surgery is already very demanding, physically, mentally. So you putting me down or not trying to at least uplift me and make me feel like I should be comfortable in this environment is crazy.
What do you think it is that creates that kind of environment? What makes people behave that way?
I wish I knew, because I think it's not in me to understand these things. I don't know why they think that this is the way. Maybe it's how surgery has been framed or the discipline has been in the years prior. Male dominated. We're all tough. I don't know.
So why surgery? What drew you to surgery? Because I know that changed for you. I know you were thinking of going to public health and then you made a decision to get into surgery. I know you did a lot of surgery in your community service years. What is it about surgery?
I experienced it in third year as well. That particular patient that he actually allowed me to assist in his surgery. I remember it was a 50-something-year-old colored male. He was a CA colon. Every single morning I saw him. Every single morning I saw that man. I formed a relationship with him. I knew him. I remember I had to have him walking up the stairs in order to see how he's able to take on surgery, if he's fit enough for surgery. You came in here, you had a diagnosis, and it was essentially fatal. But here you are, we've cut it out, and you're good to go. I was able to see him from the day he was admitted until the day he was discharged. His condition changed. His outlook on life changed. We gave him a fatal diagnosis, and we removed it. That was, for me, very satisfying. I could see that he was happy. It's been translated to every single surgical patient experience for me. They come in, they have a diagnosis, we treat, we manage, they get discharged, they come up for follow-up, and they're so grateful. Now their perspective is completely changed. With surgery, we can fix something or we can cut it out and you're good to go, or we at least make you feel comfortable. Very much different from what public health is about, because public health is very much a long-term situation. You advise, you pray, and you hope, and you advocate for programs, etc., and you pray and you hope that they listen. Very different, but both have my heart. So I actually haven't left public health. I think 2022, so it was my second year internship. Really enjoyed first year internship surgery very much. Enjoyed orthopedics as well, and got a lot of opportunities to do operations in orthopedics, and really realized that actually I really enjoy having patients come in. I do things and they're good, or they're somewhat good, and I can see their improvement tangibly. I always call it my life-defining moment when I actually had to think about, okay, what do I want to do with my life going forward? And I think for me, it was realizing that I don't need to choose. I don't need to choose to be a surgeon or a public health advocate or to work within public health. I can do it both. And I think that's where I'm looking to be, just both. They both satisfy a part of me that I need to be satisfied. I like changing systems. I like seeing a problem and fixing it, which is essentially what public health also does. Like seeing in surgery, they both see problems and you identify problems and you fix. Unfortunately, with public health, they might not take you advice. But I still want to do it. I think with surgical, unfortunately, it's very time sensitive. Also, I have surgical experience now, and since that I just continue to be comfortable in the surgical, because the older you get, the more tired you get. And surgery requires a very energetic body. And so I think for now, I've decided to focus more so on the surgical and not necessarily neglect, but engage the public health on a more off the scene basis, more the course basis, more the event basis, more going and attending events. So to stay in the discourse, but not necessarily there actively.
And maybe it's also about timing.
So I'm really keen to finish the surgical and enjoy it and do what I can and somehow integrate it, but also integrate it with my public health as well. And hopefully after I can take a sabbatical and just pursue the public health and enjoy the public health as well, change the systems, improve surgical systems as well, improve surgical care for patients through my knowledge of public health. And I think that's what we need to be doing. I think we can't separate. And for me, I can't separate. I can't separate the two.
So leadership and social advocacy, I think, has also been a theme in the conversations you and I have had over the years. I met you when you were on the Tygerberg Student Council. And if I remember correctly, your portfolio was critical engagement.
Yes, it was. It was critical engagement.
What was that time like? We started by talking about highlights of your time as a medical student, and you shared some of the painful experiences. What put you in a leadership role? What made you step up for leadership? And what was it like being a student leader on that campus?
Being a student leader on that campus, I like change. I like seeing a problem and working towards changing something, working towards betterment. And that's why I took on a leadership role. Through engagement, one can achieve so much. Other than the leadership, I also was part of Frederick van Zyl Slabbert Foundation at Stellenbosch, very much critical engagement. Of course, we have facilitated a lot of conversations. It was the women empowerment course that I ran. This course can change so much. Many of us, or many of our colleagues, essentially come from backgrounds where discourse that is very challenging, that is very emotionally rooted, that is very socially driven, is lacking. And creating platforms that prioritize this to exposing through, word and, sharing everyone's experiences assists, particularly in Stellenbosch, because a lot of our colleagues came from various backgrounds, didn't have interactions with people who look like me, sound like me, or anything. So discourse is what we had, and critical engagement allowed for such discourse.
So what are the stories that you think people need to hear or needed to hear at that time?
At that time, for me, it was that we all have different experiences. We all come from different places. We all deserve to be here. I think that's it for me. There's always a hoo-ha of who deserves to be where.
So I know that you deserve to be there. Do you believe that you deserve to be there, deserve to be a doctor, deserve to be a medical student?
I do. Well, my confidence level doesn't allow me to doubt myself ever, but I do, because I work. I work so hard and I work so strategically that everything is planned. So I've never been a person who lets things happen by chance. Getting into med school, I even remember it was Farah who came to Grahamstown, and I remember her very vividly. And she basically broke down the requirements for Stellenbosch, what they look at. And I sat down after attending that and I said, okay, this is what you meet, this is what you don't meet. They are much better people than you. They're much smarter people than you. So how can you make yourself more deserving of this position? So for me, that's how I've always looked at things. How can you essentially align yourself to be the best positioned person for this particular position? Not just academia, though. For me, it's diversifying myself and giving myself the edge. It's very difficult for you to say no to me.
What is it about that makes the emotion well up for you?
It's tiring. It was okay during high school because the workload wasn't hectic. Everything, it wasn't too much. But the older I've gotten, the more tiring it's become. So I remember we had this discussion last year. We had to let bygones be bygones and just let things be. Not always looking at the next move, what I need to do to position myself to be the best candidate or whatever. That I just let myself rest.
What makes it hard to rest?
I think when you've always positioned yourself as the smart person
or not necessarily a smart person, but I don't know how to describe it, but I guess this was where my strength lied, academia and family-wise as well. This is where I was. My brother has ADHD, and prior to treatment and everything, he had all the attention from my parents, and I guess this was where I got my attention, excellence in academia. So now I guess it's translated to this. So now having to call myself back and be like, this was like I guess what you call a trauma response, and you trying to also gain attention. My sister and I, we always make jokes and be like, oh, we were the not so troublesome kids, and look at us now.
So there's the individual and family stuff and the backstories in your family that contribute to that. But I do think that even thinking about some of those subtle microaggressions you spoke about earlier, I do think that it's really hard to make your way in the world as a young Black woman. And that feeling that you have to somehow prove that you deserve may have more to do with that than other things.
At all times, and particularly moving to Stellenbosch and everything, it ended up becoming very much a Black woman. You need to prove yourself at all times. Crazy. You weren't a quota.
Yeah. And you do know that you weren't a quota admission, right?
Even if I was, honestly, I cannot, because I know I deserve to be there.
Well, clearly, because here you are on the other side of that journey, so...
I deserve to be there. I worked hard to be there. Every decision anyone had to make to get me there, I deserve to be there.
And so you made your way through all of that, and here you are now, just completed your community service. I would like us to talk a little bit about what that was like, because I think it was not an easy time. But also to talk about, so you go to medical school, you have these ideas of becoming a doctor, and now you've graduated and there's a shortage of jobs for young doctors in your position. So what's it like to be on the other side of this medical school experience? And now you're a young doctor in the world and there's no jobs, and it's really tricky.
I've had so many breakdowns. My dad is tired of my calls crying. I did everything as per the book. I did more, in fact, and I still am not where I feel like I should be. But to be fair, I think my expectations are also quite crazy.
Okay.
So yes, the job market is very difficult. But last year broke me, the amount of workload that we had, the responsibilities that we had. Definitely, I grew a lot. My skills improved drastically. But I also know that I literally had no time for myself. My friends would be calling me at 6 p.m., 7 p.m. saying, Yonela, go home. Yonela, the hospital has someone on duty, but you need to go home right now because you've been there since 6:30 in the morning. Go home. And it was very difficult. It was very tough for all of us in the department. We really had each other's back. But I told myself that I could never do general surgery again. It completely killed me, and I was exhausted. By the end of the year, I just wanted to leave and just go home and cry. And that's what I did, which is great. But I told myself that I'll never touch general surgery again. So I allowed myself to take the 1st January off. Yes, there was no offer, but also I was like, I'm so happy there is no offer, because then I can at least take this month off to be and just exist without any responsibility, which is something that I haven't done in so long. So I did that and felt more energetic at the end of the month in Jan. And when I had recuperated and everything, and I started applying for jobs, a sessional post in neurology opened, which is crazy because then I got the post. And I was in February, and it was a sessional. But I think for me, it was very difficult that it was not a permanent job. It was sessional. It's not necessarily what I want. And possibly a general surgery post would have come a lot easier for me, having done what was necessary, having the skills, but also not willing to sacrifice myself.
I think there's something pretty wise about that.
Last year was just very much of a sacrifice. I do appreciate everything, particularly my consultants. They were very tough on us, but cared. It was a very very good balance even now that they actually check up on us yesterday even. So give me an update. And it was just merely that they cared enough to ask that, you're good, what's happening? We're working hard, long hours, and I think at levels that I don't think we should be looking at.
So what was the reality? You were in Northwest Province, right?
According to them, it's a city. So it was a tertiary hospital in the Northwest. So it was the main referral center. And essentially working as a medical officer / registrar, because we even called ourselves the mini registrars, because it just felt like there's no way. There was academic expectations, but there was also practical expectations that were quite hectic.
How many community service doctors were you?
There were 5 of us in the department. 4 of us were from Stellenbosch, females. I was the only one in particular who wanted a surgical discipline. So I gained a lot. I'm grateful that I was able to at least benefit, that I can say I did surgery and I'm competent in this way. I think we had each other's backs. We had each other's backs as comserves.
So there's community, there's colleagues, there's a sense of having each other's backs, but the workload and the level of responsibility. When you say your comserve time broke you, what does that mean?
I was exhausted. My dad just saw me in May, April, and he was concerned, and he was like, do you not want to come back? I had lost so much weight. There was definitely no taking care of oneself, because you couldn't, because you've got so much to do. You've got so much to catch up on. And I think also writing exams, because the pressure that we put on ourselves as well, that also didn't help the situation. It was a lot. We had each other's backs, and it was positive in that sense. But every day, the patients dying on a daily basis. And I think that also was just like traumatizing. Patients dying on a daily basis because of resources, because you're in a surgical discipline and patients are coming in with cancers, and there's nothing you can essentially do for some of the patients. So every single day you lose a life, it's going to have an effect on you.
And there's something about being human enough to acknowledge that it has an effect on you that is important.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first patient you worked with who died?
Actually, for me, this one was more on a positive note. It was internal medicine in 3rd year. She was my patient. I remember it was Ward A at Tageberg Hospital, and I would see this woman every single morning, and she was difficult. She was ready to fight me every single morning. She could see that her condition was worsening. She could see that she was not happy. And she was not healthy, and her family could see it as well. And I remember one morning I came back to see her at 6 o'clock in the morning, and she was not there. Now I asked the nursing staff, what's going on? Where is she? She scanned, and no, she demised. And I had to sit with myself to figure out, how do I feel about this? But it was oddly not a negative feeling that I felt. That I think she's where she's been wanting to be at in terms of our conversations. Right. She was tired. She was exhausted. I remember one day she was saying that she was tired of fighting to keep herself alive. So my first experience of a patient's death, that was my patient, was positive in that I knew what she wanted. She had expressed that she was very difficult. Every intervention that I'd be like, can you please do this?
So there's something right about that.
There was something right about her passing, because I think she was where she wanted to be.
I made some notes many years ago when you and I had a meeting with, I think, 2 or 3 of your fellow student leaders about women in leadership. And we were planning a group event, and we were talking about what the outcomes were that you wanted from that event, what you wanted participants to take away. And I wrote down something that you said that day. As you're talking now, it felt like there's something in what you were asking for then that might be important. There were 4 of you, and I asked what each of you wanted to get from the workshop for yourself and for your fellow students. And you said you wanted students to be able to analyze people's stories and be able to interpret those stories in a new way and make meaning out of somebody else's story. And that listening and analyzing is a big part of what leadership is about. And then you said, and very passionately, you said, we need to know what are the people's cries.
Wow.
Very much me. You get so much from people's stories. You get so much from listening. You gain so much.
So what do you hope people gain from your story?
My story. Sure. That I think you mustn't be too hard on yourself. Allow yourself to enjoy life. I think that's where I'm at right now. Yes, I'm here and I'm comfortable where I am, and I'm not going to take that for granted. The decisions I've made, also circumstances of where I come from, but allow yourself to enjoy life and don't be too hard on yourself. Being in medicine, seeing patients, different ages, different outcomes, you realize that life is way too short to prioritize career, and that's it. Listening to some of your podcasts as well. For me, particularly with the woman in surgery, we're not going to mention her.
Well, maybe we should, because you've also been involved in Project Flamingo, right?
Yes, I have.
So Yonela volunteers to do surgeries for Project Flamingo.
It's been amazing. And for me, in her podcast, Dr. Leona, when she just reflects back on her life, stood out for me. And it had me reflecting back on what's most important for me. As a woman in surgery, is that here I am. You ask now that she's 40, how does she feel? And I'm thinking, okay, when I'm 40, what do I want to look back and think, okay, I achieved, and what I'm happy about that I achieved, and am I happy about the decisions that I've made in relation to my personal life, career. I was driving to work, by the way. I was driving to work when I listened to that. And I was like, listen, I might quit today. It had me realize that at every point in my life, family has been everything for me. And I think I need to prioritize that even in my everyday life and my everyday decisions. So yes, I am very career-based. It's always been second nature to focus on my career. But there's also this aspect of me that is very important to me. That when I look back, when I'm 40 years old, 50, that this is going to be one of the things that I prioritize. I love my patients because my greatest entertainment form, because it's so great to interact with patients every single day. When anyone asks me, would you choose anything else? What else did you want to do? I was like, I wanted to be an accountant. And for me, every single day, I just feel like I get something different from my patients. The experience is different. Every day is new. Their stories are different and the conversations are different. It's so fulfilling. Currently, I'm working also in a private casualty. And even when the patients come in with a fever and it's 2:00 in the morning, oh my gosh, just Panado. It makes everything so worth it. It makes you feel, oh, you know what? It's okay that I didn't sleep all night because I got to interact with you. So every interaction is so different, and it actually just rejuvenates you and your humanness. And that for me is what is most important. But also, I do realize the fact that there is that family aspect that I need to also pay attention to, because yes, my patients do feed into my soul and my humanness, but I also need to fulfill this aspect.
So what does that mean? What are you going to do differently now that you have that awareness?
I have no idea.
Just keep working.
I don't know, just keep existing. This is not something I've actively thought about.
Well, you did say to me the other day that what it has done in a sense is given you permission to actually not just rush on the career treadmill and take some time and space out now, maybe work as a medical officer for a while before you jump into a registrar post and have a bit of space to just reflect and come back to center and really think about what you want. Because I think the trajectory of the medical career is such there is a lot of pressure to go straight from ComServe into a registrar post, and that actually maybe it's okay to take a bit of time and to work in different environments and get a sense of the field before you decide what you want to specialize in, if you want to specialize, because I think that is not an option that's often put on the table.
That is true. And it really has been a very great experience. I mean, yes, I do know what I want to specialize in. Being in this market where we essentially don't have jobs, being forced to enter the private space has been so different for me. It has really highlighted why public health for me is so important, because you see so many patients that require so many services, they can't because of finance, and then how certain groups of people also have such access to certain resources where it's not particularly indicated you can do certain things just because they have the financial ability.
Right. So there's a disparity in healthcare, in the private versus public. And I guess there is something really crazy, frustrating about, we have a shortage of doctors in this country. We have a public health system that is very overburdened, and we don't have the funds to appoint more doctors.
Exactly.
And then there's young doctors like yourself who really are committed and who want to work. And because of the funding, because of the budget cuts, because of the freezing of posts, there isn't employment for you. So somebody whose heart and mindset is so geared towards public health finds herself having to do sessions in the private sector.
But you get to learn a lot.
Which I think is important. You get to see the other side of medicine.
Exactly. And you also get to appreciate the public healthcare system and what it affords patients who have nothing. I won't lie, the South African public health system is doing phenomenal work.
Yeah.
And one cannot deny it
because
we see it on a daily basis. A lot of the patients that I treat coming in private, actually coming from the NHS, they would be like, we wait for about 12 hours. And you're like, oh shit, but I mean, the public people aren't waiting 12 hours at least. And you just relate it back and you just realize that I think in the public health sphere, we're also trying as much as we can globally to provide services to those who need it most.
And I think for the most part, we do provide an incredible service. And what I love is that there's doctors like you working in that service. And so I do it too. We get so focused on the inadequacies of the system that we lose sight of the heart of the individuals that are working in the system.
Yes, definitely. I still think that we need to continue to focus on those inadequacies of the system. Focusing on things like that is how one forms solutions. That's why I really need people to look where we're falling short. I think that is what's so important. And I think that's where health systems, like, yes, I'm going to say it, the Western Cape, has looked at, and the institutions have said, okay, this is where we're falling short. So how can I improve on this? Yes, it's a minor detail, but it's so important. And it's the little daily activities one does that improve an entire system.
What do you wish you had known about medicine before you began?
That's tiring. And you're tired 90% of the time, that emotionally you're going to be exhausted because you really are dealing with people at their most vulnerable. And therefore you need to be vulnerable too, and you need to be open to them. You can't come into their fever and act like, oh, it's nothing, because for them it is everything. Even a fever.
Is there anything you would do differently if you could go back and start again?
Don't ask me this question.
I am asking you this question.
No. This is a question that I think it lingers in my heart of heart, in the deepest, very superficially. Yes, I definitely wouldn't have done medicine and not been a CA, but health is where I'm supposed to be, in whichever form it's in, whether it's in the public health or the surgical, whichever form. This is where I'm supposed to be. I do have a heart for people, and health has been able to allow me to embrace that.
And the 15 or 16-year-old who witnessed her cousin having a seizure and made a decision that she would never feel so helpless again.
she's no longer helpless. She can actually manage a seizure. She knows what to do. She knows how to go about it.
Coming back to this idea of people's stories and how we need to listen to people's stories and make meaning of those stories, and we need to know what other people's cries. What's your cry?
Oh, wow. What's my cry?
Mm.
I have no idea what my cry is at this point. I don't know.
Mm.
It's very hard to focus on yourself, I guess, in the greater scheme of the medical field.
What do you think makes it hard?
The system is so overburdened with such a great load of patients, and you trying to carry everyone else's cries, that it's so hard. When you come back, you just want to essentially flush yourself out of those and drown yourself in a movie or a book or academics, that you can't even sit down and be like, oh, hey, where am I?
Mm. So where are you?
I don't know. But I'm trying. I know what I like. I know what I'm passionate about.
And it's okay not to know at this stage of the journey.
Yeah,
You've just completed an enormous task. 6 years of medical school, 2 years of internship, and a 1-year community service. It's okay to just pause and breathe and not yet know exactly what's next.
I don't know. And I'm taking my time. We've spoken about how I'm just taking my time to figure out where I'm at, where I'm going. I am not in a rush right now. And I think a lot of people that I've spoken to, particularly here, is that getting out or being a specialist as soon as possible. But for me, I just don't feel like, yes, I do want the rest that comes with being a specialist. And I think that is what we all are craving for. And that's what we all want. The rest that comes with specializing. Getting there, so tiring. And I want time so that I can be my best.
I think that's very wise.
You're trying this wisdom thing.
How's that working for you?
27 years. Of just rolling around.
So what advice would you have for a young woman who grew up partially in a rural, partially in an urban area, and is about to start medical school in January?
Keep at it. Have faith in yourself. You deserve to be there. Never doubt yourself. And people may say things and people may make little snarky remarks, but never doubt your work ethic and what you've done to get to where you are and your experiences. Because honestly, your experiences are what make you the perfect person for that post or for that position, that class. And your particular experiences in life are what is going to make you as a doctor different from the next person. That's the thing with diversity that we always forget, is that how I look at things and how my white male colleague look at things are very different because of our circumstances, how we grew up and what we prioritize. So what I'm going to bring to the field is going to be completely different what he brings to the field. But both of us equally need to bring something to this field. You need to embrace yourself being there and you need to take that position up boldly because we need you. We really need you.
I hope you're hearing that advice, Yonela.
Maybe.
We need you. And the perspective that you bring and the experiences you've had make you uniquely qualified for the role.
Exactly.
Is there anything we haven't spoken about that you'd like to share?
We've touched on everything. Onto the road of becoming a neurologist, because we are taking up positions that aren't generally taken up by Black women.
By women and then Black women.
In South Africa and the world at large. So exciting times ahead, challenges ahead, but we'll see where we go.
When do you start your new position?
They said when they send the confirmation letter, I'm good to go. I need to start. That's what they said. So if it comes maybe in the next hour, maybe then that's it.
Okay.
I'm very happy. I called my dad yesterday. I was so happy.
How about you, Amy? Anything you'd like to ask Yonela?
I was just thinking, if I was your patient, I would be very happy. I don't know if I would want to high five you or hug you, but I just think it's so cool that you are so authentic and real and connected emotionally, and that you can laugh and you can cry and you can do it simultaneously, and that there's the light and the dark. And it's really beautiful. And we do need you. And whatever you end up doing, we need you. And you bring a lot to the table, and you deserve to be wherever you choose to be. And you're just wonderful. So thank you. I'm so excited to see where you end up. This is just the start. So and please take a break.
No, I'm definitely looking at taking a break. Eventually. I can't promise anything.
I also have something else written here in my notes about something you said about yourself last year. And it was that you know loss, and because of that, you know love.
Oh.
That you know how to make a heavy situation light, and that you bring joy to every room, and that you're happy about that.
That's literally what I want to do. That's literally me.
Tell me what about that makes you cry?
Because sometimes you realize that, positivity is it's a crazy thing, because sometimes you want to, am I just being too optimistic about life? Am I being delusional? I think it's the delusion that you associate with positivity, but I can't help it. I'm very crazily positive in how I've been able to, navigate this life thing.
I remember years ago when Obama was still a senator, he wrote a book about the state of American politics, but the title of the book was The Audacity of Hope. And that title really stayed with me. And, when you talk about positivity, I'm not hearing like a fake la-la kind of positivity. I'm hearing hope and a willingness to be part of solutions.
Yes. That's the thing with experiences in life. I can't say that I take anything that I've been through for granted, because it's really, even the worst of experiences, from my mother's death and everything, it's who I am, and it's made me who I am. I can't dissociate that from who I am.
I think that's normal. I think that's healthy. And I'm very aware that you've just introduced a very big topic.
Very big topic.
Right here at the end. And one that I know about, but that I didn't think you would talk about today. Yes. Do you want to tell us about your mother's death?
My mother passed away at a very young age. I actually don't know her. 3 months old, car accident. And I only found out properly because my dad remarried a few years later, which is when we ended up moving to be with my grandmother because of my mother's death, and my dad trying to navigate life without my mother. I only found out, I think, when I was grade 1, 6, 7 years old, from someone's odd remark that was made randomly. And then I was like, okay, so I guess this is not my mother, the person essentially that I regarded as my mother all my life. It was interesting how I kind of reacted to that, in that it wasn't a sad realization for me per se. It was like, okay, so this is the case, but it changed nothing for me because the treatment was essentially still the same. I was raised in a loving household. She didn't treat me any differently. Actually, I'm lying. She definitely treated my brother, my mom's child, and her child differentently, the boy.
Okay, so it was about boys.
2 kids. It was about boys. My mom had 2 kids, myself and my older brother. My stepmom, who I refer to as my mom, as my little brother. And she treated my sister and I, her older daughter. We always going she treated those boys so good. The treatment was amazing and everything. So for me, changed nothing finding out. I was 7 and I like to know where she came from, but nothing else really changed for me. As I said, I know love because of the situations that I've been through. I know what real love is, and it's been amazing to experience. That experience really captures who I am and how I experience love.
So if I said, who is Dr. Yonela Kentane, what would you say?
It's a very passionate person, a very emotional, very in touch with her patients. That's who Dr. Kentane is, and very keen to help her patients at all times. But I also don't regard myself as Dr. Kentane. I regard myself as Yonela.
So who's Yonela?
who's Yonela? Very emotional, but really keen to help people and really keen to experience life and experience people in their different natures and everything and experience life. So really keen on experiencing life now because that's where I need to be. I cried in front of the whole department last year. A patient of mine demised, and she had come in with obstructive gallstones, and the medicine people said, no, we have to intervene. Fine, we intervened, but we had to send it to Joburg. And she came back and she had pancreatitis, but severe pancreatitis. And she was young. She was about like 40. And she had a hectic call with so many laps of patients. So that was exhausting. And then in between each lap, I had to...
Laparotomy.
Yeah, laparotomy.
Opening the abdomen, for those who don't know.
Opening the abdomen. I had to go and review her, and I had an intern literally sitting next to her, camping next to her, because I was like, I just need regular gases. I just need you to just pay attention to this patient. I ended up getting her to ICU. She coded in ICU. She demised. And I had to present in the morning meeting. I definitely cried in front of a majority male department of consultants. I was presenting the death and I cried and I couldn't. My registrar had to take over, but I was like, oh, yep, this is it. This is the day where Yonela cries in front of the whole department. My consultants were like, okay, Yonela, are you okay? Like an hour later. So I'm a crier. HODs have seen it.
It's always interesting that if you are a crier, because it's more about like how other people feel uncomfortable about it, because they would never do that. So it's more about how they're feeling. Well, you're like, I cried. This is what I do. This is how I express myself. It's not a big deal. I'm fine. And then everybody else is like, are you okay? Yeah, because I cried. So it's out of my system.
I'm done.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's all good.
I just needed to cry about this.
So what are you left with at the end of this conversation? What's it been like? To tell us a little bit about your story and what are you taking away?
What am I taking away? Tears. Been a very long journey, very resilient and very hard-headed, and I will push. I'm a very hard worker. I am where I'm supposed to be right now.
Thank you, Yonela. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for your big, beautiful, open heart and your vulnerability, and for not losing hope.
Thank you. Thank you for this platform, and thank you for your sessions generally, because this is my cry session. Every single time we have a session, definitely tears. Since day one.
This is true. Your tears are very welcome here.
Thank you for making me feel like I can cry and be vulnerable and just be myself. And I think that for me is very important.
I love that you can do that. I love that you can be real, and I love that you're in touch with your feelings. And I love that you feel things and you keep doing what you need to do. The feelings don't overwhelm you, but that they are there and they're allowed to be there.
I realized that I think crying and allowing yourself to cry and be vulnerable, even though, even if it's in your own space, so however you go about it, it's so important to be able to rejuvenate yourself and the next day be able to cope. Because if I don't, then I'm just going to be a ball of anxiety.
Eve Ensler has a brilliant TED talk called I Am an Emotional Creature, about the importance of emotion and about the importance of feeling your emotions. And by that, I don't mean that we should allow emotion to hijack us or control our lives, but that when you're in touch with your emotions, you're much more tuned to what's happening in the world and you can respond appropriately. Okay.
I'm just looking forward to hearing Yonela's cries.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, I cry. It's okay. They can hear me cry.
I think they're going to hear you roar. I'm Dr. Maria Christodoulou, and you've been listening to the Awakening Doctor podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with your friends, follow Awakening Doctor on Instagram, Facebook, and Spotify, and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe, rate, and give us a good review. Thank you so much for listening.